Grace and peace. My name is Paul Dazet. I'm the pastor at Sandy Hook United Methodist Church. It's good to be with you this morning. Today, we're going to talk about the intersections for this past week that we've been studying, as well as a preview for Sunday's service at Sandy Hook. First off, a little show and tell. So today in the mail, actually yesterday in the mail, we got the new covers for the Chronicle, where we keep our intersections this year, or this is for 2022. The backside's pretty cool too. It's been redesigned. So big thank you to Pastor John Gibson in Ohio for doing the graphics, and he does such a great job year after year. So I'm excited about handing these out. Hopefully in a few weeks we'll have it all together for all those at Sandy Hook. All right, let's talk about intersections this week. Here's the chart we put on the screen. So that's where we've been this week. We started Monday in Mark chapter 13, verses 1 to 8. It is a passage of apocalyptic literature where Jesus is giving clues about the destruction of the temple. Not one stone will be left on top of another. It is a reminder that things are things are broken and breaking, and we have to stay alert and to watch out and don't panic. Those are some of the things that Jesus encourages us. He encourages us to have patience and hope in the midst of destruction, in the midst of despair that comes along in days of war and destruction. Let's see. On Tuesday, we talked about Hebrews chapter 10, verses 11 to 25. And really, this passage is a summary of Hebrews. So it's a summary of the whole book. It talks about how we are called to go on to perfection. Perfection does not mean as in quality, in the sense it means wholly dedicated, perfect in heart, or perfect in love. It's what John Wesley called sanctification, or sanctified heart. It's a process, it's a journey, becoming more and more about love. There's talks about a new covenant in Jeremiah 31. So Hebrews quotes that. Talks about confidence and boldness of faith, having full assurance and hope, confident expectation of the future. And then we are to provoke one another to good deeds, provoke one another to love, meeting together. Don't forget to meet together, and because the day is approaching. Some really good stuff here, talking kind of about the priest and the priesthood. Wednesday's passage is First Samuel chapter 1, verses 4 to 20. This passage is about the abuse that Hannah was going through in her household, and she persevered in prayer. She was very persistent, and she poured out her soul. Eli thought she was drunk, which is a kind of a preview of the Pentecost. The disciples were drunk, and so Hannah makes a vow. Won't cut his hair. It's a Nazarite vow. And she promises to give back if she has a child. And so God acted in compassion, and Samuel is a gift of love. Kind of Samuel and the whole birth narrative is a kind of a preview of Jesus's birth narrative in certain ways, which is kind of cool. So yeah. And then Thursday's passage, 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 to 10, is a kind of a psalm of praise, a song of praise, a prayer of praise. That, it definitely looks like a psalm, but it's in 1 Samuel, and this is Hannah praising God for the birth of Samuel. And so the word Hannah means graced, and so she is graced with a son, and she has a new voice, a new power, a new dignity, a new presence. She talks in the first person because she has been changed. My heart, my strength, my mouth, my enemies, my victory. Talks about God's power for life against the barrenness of death. There's a a turning of the tables, a changing of the social hierarchy. Kind of reminds me of Mary's song in Luke chapter 1. And then at the end, it's a preview of the coming king. It talks about his king. It's David. He's anointed. So there's hope for Israel, new possibilities. And so what we see in this psalm is starts off very personal with Hannah's joy of receiving a son, but it ends with because of all of this, there's hope for God's people, which is pretty cool. So over to the intersections this week, what did you find? I wrote down three. First is the need for perseverance. That comes from Mark chapter 13, 1-8. In this idea that the disciples need to persevere in the midst of tragedy all around them, the destruction of the temple. There is this idea of perseverance in Hebrews, talking about provoking and encouraging those to continue doing good deeds of love. And also there is this idea of perseverance in the challenge of faith and hope. The perseverance in prayer of Hannah. So perseverance, the need for perseverance. There's also kind of a backdrop of the priesthood, or the priest and the priesthood. We see the temple as the home of the priesthood. We see in Hebrews, all of it is about the priesthood, the priest, the great high priest Jesus, and the priesthood of believers. We see the Eli and the whole reference to temple and priesthood there. And then finally, the third intersection is kind of this virtue of hope. And we see this kind of interwoven through these passages, specifically in the gospel passage where it talks about the disciples need to do not panic. It's a call to trust God in the midst of the destruction of the temple, that God's got this, right? There's also hope as a theme within Hannah, that she's going to God in prayer. She has hope that God's going to do something about her barrenness, right? There is hope for the future in the psalm, which is in 1 Samuel chapter 2. And then there's hope, confidence, expectation of the future that is woven in the Hebrews passage. So there you go, my three intersections this week for the need for perseverance, this idea of priesthood, which we're part of the priesthood believers, and this idea of hope. Now, one of the key things when you're doing intersections isn't just to learn these things mentally, but to apply them to your heart. And so when, I'm going through these intersections at the end of the week, I'm thinking about how does my life intersect with these passages, right? So is God calling me to have further perseverance in the midst of the struggles that I'm going through? Hope for the future that God is going to see this through, right? God's going to complete what he started. He's going to sanctify. He's going to deliver, right? And so applying that to my life, where do I need more perseverance? Where do I need more hope? How is God calling me to be a priest within his priesthood of believers? This idea of representing God in faith and hope and love, as it talks about in Hebrews, to have this idea of prayer as an important part of the priesthood, praying persistently like Hannah. So we can go on and on there, right? Some great stuff in the intersections this week. Will you share what you learned with me? I appreciate it so much. I love to learn from you. Preview for Sunday, this coming Sunday, we're going to be focusing it on that Mark 13, 1-8 passage. We're going to be talking about the destruction of the temple, the stones falling down. We experience destruction in our own life. And so what does God have to say to us about that? The sermon series is A Life That Matters. And so we're talking about how to live a life that matters in this crazy world that we live in, a world that's changed because of the pandemic. How do we grab hold of God's call to be a disciple, but also to make other disciples in the midst of so much uncertainty, right? And so we're going to talk about that passage from Mark chapter 13, 1-8, which it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Also, don't forget Sunday school. Nursery, small groups and everything kind of gets back going this coming Sunday, 10 a.m. Nursery will be open for both services and Sunday school, but Sunday school will be taking place at for all ages at 10 a.m. I feel like there's something else I'm supposed to mention. Oh yeah, don't forget your Operation Christmas Child boxes. They're due by Monday, so if you can bring them on Sunday, it would be great. There will be sign-ups in the sanctuary for several different missional projects, including the Giving Tree. When it comes to hands and feet families, we'll have some of that going on. We'll also have signups for the big Thanksgiving outreach that we're doing with Sarah Humphrey, over 500 meals, and so we'll have a table in the sanctuary for you to sign up if you haven't already to participate in that. So a lot of great ways to respond to God's word. Looking forward to worshiping with you on Sunday. Grace and peace, everyone. Have a great rest of the week and weekend. Love you guys.